Hello everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar, Decoding End-to-End Automation for 5G, ORAN and Telco Cloud, sponsored by Tech Mahindra with Intel. Before we begin, I will cover a few housekeeping items. On the left-hand side of the screen is the Q&A. If you have any questions during the webcast, please type your questions into the Q&A box and submit your questions to our speakers. All questions will be saved, so if we don't get to answer you, we may follow up via email. At the bottom of your audience console are multiple application widgets you can use. If you have any technical difficulties, please click on the yellow help widget. Here you can find answers to common questions. A copy of today's slide deck is available for download in the green resource list widget. Near the end of today's presentation, please take 1 minute to complete the survey that's open on your screen. Your feedback is extremely helpful. An on-demand version of the webcast will be available about 1 day after the event and can be accessed using the same audience link that was sent to you earlier today. I would now like to turn the event over to Heavy Reading's Principal Analyst, Ruth Brown.
Thanks very much, Sam. So hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today, and welcome to Decoding End-to-End Automation for 5G ORAN and the Telco Cloud. So automation is obviously a really important topic for the mobile industry, and it's great to have the opportunity to discuss this today. We all know that 5G has introduced many new services and capabilities. We're already seeing these, but at the same time, it's also increased a lot of complexity in the space, and it's putting a big focus onto how service providers are going to effectively manage and orchestrate these services. And we're going to need automation. So in today's webinar, we're going to be discussing ORAN and Telco Cloud technologies, the role of automation, deployment scenarios and solutions. So thanks again for joining us today. So first of all, I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce everybody. I'm Ruth Brown. I'm going to be your moderator today. I'm also delighted to be joined by Sandeep Sharma, VP and Global Head of Portfolio 5G, RAN and ORAN at Tech Mahindra. Hi, Sandeep. And I'm also delighted.
Thank you for
hi there.
Me here.
Hi. Good to have you on board today. I'm also really happy to be joined by Srihari Mallavarapu, Global Partner, Market and Ecosystem Development Lead at Intel. So welcome.
Hey, thanks, Ruth, and thanks, everyone, for joining this webinar.
Brilliant. Good to have you both on board. So let's go through today's agenda. So to start off with, we're going to go through the trends in automation, and then we'd like to get the audience view on a couple of areas to do with where we think network functions cloudification currently is, and then what we think the benefits of automation are currently. These will link into our panel discussion, and Srihari and Sandeep are going to be discussing a number of areas, which include challenges, drivers towards automation, and also some deployment examples, before finally we wrap up with some conclusions and also hopefully some questions and Q&A. So let's start off by having a look at automation trends. So to cover some of the points influencing automation in the industry, first of all, so we have in the diagram, and although it's simplified in places, we can see the full extent of the network. And we can also see that there are a number of key areas that will link into automation. Today's focus, as we've mentioned, is mainly going to be around RAN and telco domains and in the discussion today. But within 5G automation, it's going to really help 5G cloud native technology in a number of areas. So this is areas such as operator processes for planning, we want deployment, assurance, and also automation helping and supporting configuration and of network and services. So moving on to have a look at the trends. So firstly, disaggregation has happened in all areas across the 5G network. It's enabled many benefits. So we're able to avoid vendor lock-in, we're able to share network resources, and also it supports a lot of flexibility within the 5G network. However, disaggregation as well is one of the most important drivers, I feel, for automation. So let's have an examine why. So firstly, disaggregation has introduced some complexity. And to cut through complexity, we need automation. We're also, with automation, allow ourselves to plan and install workloads faster. And we're going to leverage cloud scale advantages, because this will allow us efficiencies to fine-tune our network operations. And we're seeing this already. So an example in the ORAN space. So one of the ORAN's key features whilst in operation comes via the RAN intelligent controller. So this controller gives the ability to onboard third-party applications. So while in use, these applications can add automation to allow the RAN to be optimized for operation. So previously, these types of activity have been quite manual. Also, if we look towards edge and also core automation and the services within the 5G core, 5G really is redefining the way we're doing things, and it's also not just one model fits all. So we have various deployment models being used, and this is putting a greater reliance on end-to-end automation. Many of the services for 5G, as we know, are real-time, and they're based on things happening immediately. And this is driving network operations to react instantaneously. So we need it to be able to scale networks or adjust service parameters automatically. As we look towards services, one service in particular which will require automation to be built in is network slicing. So we want to allow an operator to rapidly provision our network slice, to be able to configure this network slice, and also to be able to adapt as we get fluctuating demands. If we move to edge now, edge automation could allow intelligent orchestration. So this would allow people to place applications or functions in the correct locations at the edge of a network to support varying services or subscriber needs. Finally, looking at DevOps. So cloud technology, of course, has moved us into a software-driven world. So the requirement for software methodologies is really needed to support and drive automation. And we're looking at areas such as continuous integration and development to create opportunities. So this will allow faster development cycles, faster deployment into live, and also allow us to fix or upgrade the network fast. These trends are building towards closed loop automation and also zero touch. And we're seeing a lot of this talked about in the industry. It's also pulling these technologies and pulling in technologies such as intent-based automation, and this is driven by AI and machine learning, and also includes proactive assurance. So really, to gain the most out of automation and support real-time applications, we need service providers to create a strategy to link automation across every single domain, from DevOps to orchestration, analytics, and assurance. So before we move into our panel discussion, we're now going to run a poll question to ask our audience about a couple of things. So if we have a look at the poll question, we'd like the audience to start voting now. And the question is, what network functions have you already cloudified or virtualized? And the choices are core, RAN, end-to-end, network automation, network virtualization, or none, don't know. So I'll leave this slide up for a moment before we hop onto the results. So the question again is, what network functions have you already cloudified or virtualized? So if we go on to the live poll, we can see people voting there, and we'll just give it a couple more seconds. Okay, so Sandeep, maybe I can bring you in here. Do the results for this poll question surprise you at all?
Not exactly, to be honest. If you look at from the virtualization perspective, virtualization has evolved to a certain extent to come from the core perspective. RAN is a new phenomena that is happening. A few customers, of your operators have gone into that direction. And the true benefit of having an end-to-end virtualization will only comes in when you have a RAN virtualization in place, because your major, I would say, part of the infrastructure in a telecom network is RAN. And that's actually the topic that we are going to discuss today. It's about the ORAN, Open RAN, and how the RAN workloads are virtualized and getting the maximum benefit out of this virtualization.
Mm-hmm. And Srihari, can I bring you in to comment further on this poll question?
Yeah, actually, thanks for this very good question to start our conversation. And I feel this didn't surprise me. And actually, as we know, core as a workload, it is being run into the data centers. Now it is moving towards the edge location also. That is more closer to the cloudification and virtualization environment. So that's where core is getting virtualized. The core is the first workload that is being virtualized by the telcos, obviously. And RAN, whereas it involves a lot of complexity, the efforts are in right direction to make it virtualize and move towards it. Yeah, the answers didn't surprise me. Actually, there is a naturally core is a dominating workload which is getting virtualized faster. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, brilliant. And let's move on to our second poll question now before we link into our panel discussion. So the poll question is, what benefits do you foresee that automation will bring to your network? We've got agility, flexibility and scalability, innovation, or all of the above. So I'll let people have a vote, and then again, we'll move to the next slide to discuss the answers. So what benefits do you foresee that automation will bring to your network? I'm just going to move on to the next slide so we can see the results coming in. Great. I think they seem fairly stable to start off with. So Srihari, do you want to comment first on the outcome of this question and how you interpret it?
Yeah, this is maybe the easy question, but actually definitely all of the, I also personally feel that it's all of the above is the answer. And definitely the automation in the network is going to bring us agility and flexibility needed, as well as innovation for telcos to innovate and try to provide the rapid service changes, whatever they need to do. So all of the above, this didn't surprise me. All of the above is the right answer, I feel.
Thank you. And Sandeep, do you have anything to add on this question?
No, just that I agree with the audience and with Srihari. All of the above is the right approach, because there are many things. I think giving it 3 options for automation itself is a small one. There are many things that we can do with automation. And as we go further in this discussion, we'll find out more things around it.
Brilliant. Thank you both. Right. So this is great. So we're going to move into the panel discussion now. So both sort of Sandeep and Srihari. The first topic that we're going to discuss today is about Open RAN and Telco Cloud, and kind of getting a status check of where we are in the industry. So we're going to look and discuss what are the main areas for operators selecting Open RAN? Do we feel Open RAN has matured at all? Also, how do we assess the maturity in the telco cloud deployments today? And what choices have we seen by operators? And then finally, as part of this discussion piece, what do we see as the biggest challenges for both technologies? So over to you, Sandeep.
Yeah, thanks, Ruth. I think there's a good start about the topic. Open RAN is personally very close to my heart, because I feel a lot of potential is there in this technology. And if you look at my view around why operators should select an Open RAN, so there are multiple, I would say, benefits that it will bring in. And before talking about the benefits, let's understand what operator wants from the network. What they want is a control on the network in terms of how the operator's network should run or evolve in future. Control on the feature set that they want to deploy, And different CSPs is 5G coming in. Different CSPs have different expectations from the network in terms of it may be like more centered towards enterprise use case, more centered towards end consumers, and even different use case may also arise. And looking at the different, complexity of use case, and at the same time, getting a best-in-breed solution, operator needs I would say, control to find the best which is available in the market and fit in a whole story and full picture. So with OpenRAN coming in, it actually allows multiple benefits. One is the disaggregation of software and hardware, and availability of the open interface. So you can mix and match the best component available, either in terms of radio or in terms of DU or the CU or the applications that are running on top of it, and getting it, I would say, structured, a verified stack end to end, and so that the operators will use this stack as something which is more tailor-made for their need, and which they feel is I would say justifying the cause of having a network for their consumers. At the same time, if you talk about maturity, Tech Mahindra was involved in OpenRAN from the very start, I would say, and we have seen this, OpenRAN evolving over a great maturity till date. Standards evolved a lot, and there are three main deployments that either happened or happening in terms of different operators. Far east to far west, tier 1 operator in far east, tier 1 operator in far west, and an upcoming operator in Europe. All have, greenfield operators have, looked at OpenRAN as a mature technology. They invested into it, and they're deploying it, and are reaping the benefit out of it as well. And apart from this, greenfield operators, the brownfield operators also have trialed this technology. They also, including OpenRAN as part of their network evolution path, and deployments are happening around that as well. But it's still many things can be achieved out of OpenRAN. The RIC that you talk about, intelligence that is there, that's also shaping up now, and we see more and more use case getting automated in an OpenRAN environment. And if you talk about from the cloud perspective, the beauty of OpenRAN coming with the cloud, telco cloud, is that you can find out which cloud strategy fits specifically for each operator. Different, I would say, ideology exists. Few go with the public cloud, few go with the private cloud, and there is hybrid cloud model as well. But it all depends on what type of deployment that needs to be in place in terms of the defined architecture which operator has thought of, and the cloud strategy will fit into place. And in terms of, I would say, challenges, so both technologies are, I would say, is very excellent technologies. Both OpenRAN and cloud technology as a whole, we all know about it. And the biggest challenge that I feel is I would say lack of understanding. The skill set that is required to deploy, to integrate it end to end, and getting a sense out of it from, I would say cloud was there in the IT world for a long time. Getting into telco space and getting the benefit of cloud environment with a core and the RAN perspective and an end-to-end perspective is something that I would say a skill set that we need to look at, and getting this technology more into the, I would say, mass scale, getting more people know about it, and getting understanding around it.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sandeep. So can I hand over to you now, Srihari, just to add some thoughts around these talking points? Srihari, can you hear me, or are you on mute?
I realize I'm sorry, Ruth. I'm speaking on mute. So
Okay,
thanks, Sandeep,
thank you.
and you covered most of it. I'll try to add some of the points that aligns with my thought process. First of all, I'm thinking of OpenRAN and Telco Cloud is very good technologies. They both go in hand to make a disaggregated telco network and highly resilient telco network possible. And OpenRAN, the way telcos are looking, mainly the first reason for them to look at OpenRAN is that TCO. at the end, right, telcos are looking for how to make their telco networks as much cost competitive as possible. One of the thing I feel they believe is that by bringing in more players into the play, Open RAN definitely disaggregates the total network and bring in more players into the play. That will help them to reduce their TCO in the long run. That is one. And second one is that today's world, telco, if at all they want to do any innovation or any changes into their network, it takes long time. They can't do much innovation. That's where Open RAN is going to help them, bringing in more players and able to give them the control on the network, ability to see instead of becoming a black box for them. They're able to see what exactly happening in the telco networks and able to replace, if at all, some portions of, able to replace some of the vendors into that in a seamless manner. So these are the major things. One is that they are looking at open interfaces where they can choose different vendors for the different portions of the workloads and different portions of the telco service creation, as well as they're mainly majorly looking at the TCO also. And when come to the telco cloud is nothing but your cloudification of complete your network workload, able to run your telco workload into that. And operators are definitely choosing the telco cloud. It is at various stages of deployment. Sandeep, as you mentioned, greenfield and brownfield. For the greenfield guys, it becomes more easy for them to try it in the telco cloud, whereas the brownfield guys try to catch up and adopt the telco cloud. But maturity of it is moving in the right direction. That's what I feel. And when we come to the challenges for these both technologies, telcos feels that these both technologies are very good in the long term, and 5G, these technologies are definitely needed for them to innovate into their telco network. But as and when they started understanding and started understanding deep enough on the Open RAN technology, they understood that whenever these multiple players are involved, there are a lot of challenges. It is they need to solve a complex puzzle. That's where the players like TechM and our guys, ecosystem players, Intel also can help that how to make sure that this telco can adopt these open RAN kind of solutions easily. As of now, operators, the major challenge they feel is that operators are used to go to the single vendor, get their service done. Now, whereas it comes to the open RAN and these technologies, they need to work with the multiple vendors and still making sure that meet the criteria telco target criteria compared to many other cloud deployments. Telco cloud deployments have stringent quality requirements. So that's where operators are feeling the challenge to adopt these technologies. I feel, Sandeep. Thank you.
Thank you both. Right, let's move on to the next discussion area. So now we're going to have a look at the role of automation in telco networks. So on this kind of area, we'd like to consider why should operators pursue automation in disaggregated networks. We also want to look at views and approaches and what's being looked at to overcome the current complexities, for example, sort of the RAN automation. So if we hand over to Srihari first on this question.
Thanks, Ruth. I can start this question and give it to Sandeep. Why should operators pursue automation in these disaggregated networks? That gives the answer. Actually, we are splitting the telco network into horizontally. We are disaggregating hardware with the software. That is one. And we are dividing into the software stack with the multiple vendors. Many players are involved into this. If you want to make any change into this telco network, able to do it manually will cause a lot of trouble, and it is almost impossible. So definitely for to manage these networks, lot of automation is needed so that they can do the stitch together and making sure that this automation works together. And there are telcos are taking multiple approaches, as well as industry is helping them in creating this automation. One of the example I can say is that cloud native approaches. Smart Edge is one of the Intel and Tecem work together, where we're trying to make the pre-validated solutions ready. We'll call it as a experience kits, where we cloud native ran trying to integrate as an end-to-end and pre-validate available to the industry, so that they can mimic those kind of integration methodologies and adapt into to build their telco services.
Yeah. Thanks, Srihari. You put it nicely. But going towards automation and disaggregation, I think one thing is given from the poll result as well. Automation is a must to have to achieve all the efficiencies.
Right.
And if you look at today's network, if you talk about especially 5G networks, 5G network itself, I would say it has a lot of complexity. We have 3 different bands, low, mid, and high coming in. We have different perspective for end consumers, for operators, and for the industry as a whole, the private 5G type of use cases. This puts a lot of requirement on 5G as well in terms of complex parameters, a large number of parameters that needs to be fine-tuned day in, day out. To achieve that type of, I would say, expectation from a network with the 5G type of network, which is complex itself enough, actually disaggregation is a blessing to achieve automation. As Srihari rightly mentioned, that since we have disaggregated hardware and software, it gives us a flexibility to automate many things from the software perspective. And no need to, I would say the telcos need not to focus on too much of day to day and day out of the parameter change and the stuff. Automation will take care of it. But we need to have a clear framework in terms of which domain we are automating, end-to-end automation, or what type of automation that we are bringing in. Today it's quite fragmented, but I think things are coming into place. If you look at different approaches that operators are looking at to overcome these complexity, I would agree with Srihari. Many approaches is there, and coming off horizontal and vertical integration that is required in a disaggregated complex network. The automation plays an important role. Many use case makes more sense if we have the compute on the edge, far edge, near edge. It all depends on the architecture of the network and the availability of the infrastructure around it. But the moment we go into automation, we can achieve multiple efficiencies in terms of faster time to market, putting a CI/CD pipeline in place so that the real-time functionalities goes through the network, and the testing that is required, it could be continuous testing as well. So automation from different space, both from the benefit that we can generate out of this disaggregation and cloud coming into picture, and getting the efficiencies to have the best of the technologies like 5G, which itself is quite, I would say, promising technology. So 5G with ORAN and the cloud layer coming on it, it's create a complete picture to achieve automation and the efficiencies out of it.
Thank you, Sandeep and Srihari. So let's move on again to talk about another point during this panel discussion. So we're now going to look at deployment scenarios. And in particular, we want to see some of the areas, and we want to try and discuss what are some of the possible deployment scenarios for optimizing networks when we're deploying automated 5G technologies. So perhaps around sort of public cloud, private cloud, or hybrid, and also what are our recent observations in terms of deployment scenarios that you both might have seen. So if we go to Srihari first to comment.
Hey, thanks, Ruth. This is an excellent question. And actually, if you think of possible deployments, right, all these scenarios are possible. And one single line answer is that hybrid cloud is the most approach most of the telcos are taking. But depending on the scenarios of the telcos, let's say last time Sandeep mentioned, right, the greenfield guys, they have a liberty to move the most of their workload depending on the volume of their business, they have a liberty to move total thing into the public cloud also. There are some kind of scenarios, attempts are being made in that direction. But the general observation is that, my observation is that whenever the telco functions are there, network functions are there, those functions, operators or telcos are trying to run into their private cloud, more closer to into their environment, and that is their they want to keep it closer to them. That's what they're trying to manage, private cloud. Whenever the enterprise applications like music are offering a cloud gaming, and you need lot of scale depending on the how the clients and business enterprise is going to react, that's where naturally telcos are relying on to more onto the public cloud. So these enterprise applications are well suited for the public cloud. So most of the enterprise applications being run into the public cloud, and private cloud is mainly being used because of the preference of the telcos to keep their workloads intact into their secured boundary kind of thing. That is observation on the private cloud. So overallly, there is no single answer, Ruth, for this, but this is a hybrid kind of environment depending on the different telco choices, different scenarios they are choosing. And if you see the recent observations, and there are completely cloud native observations are there, where some of the operators are able to run, some of the operators, actually maybe one or two major operators, able to run their telco workload with a few workforces and a kind of a cloud agility they're able to run. So that means that they're able to run into their cloud environment completely, all the telco workloads. And they're trying to cultivate this further towards the other telcos, and with the help of major system integrators like Tech Mahindra. Yeah.
Brilliant. And handing over to Sandeep for some thoughts on this discussion area.
Yeah, thanks, Ruth, and thanks, Srihari, for putting it nicely. I think you covered almost all the important points in it. Cloud perspective, I'd say the telco cloud itself, gives a lot of flexibility. And when we talk about putting a choice, what type of cloud it has to be, it all depends on, as she has covered, depends on which part of the network you want to put on cloud. It is core only, it is RAN, and within the RAN itself, it is a DU part or the CU part of it. Because different, I would say, component of a network puts a different set of requirements that you expect out of the hardware or the cloud that you are putting in. Initially, when it started as a journey from the ORAN perspective, it started with the private cloud because the public cloud was not ready to take care of that at that point of time. And when they matured enough in terms of handling the RAN workload as well, I see a transition happening towards a hybrid cloud where part of the workload will reside within a private cloud, which is more, I would say, complex, or which operator wants to keep it with them. And partly we see one or two operators are also moving towards a few of the workloads to a bigger cloud as well. And this type of scenarios also evolved in terms of what type of topology in terms of transport infrastructure also exists in the network. And all these blueprints needs to be created well in advance while operators are looking at the network architecture. And accordingly, the infrastructure needs to be built in around. In terms of recent observations, as she has mentioned, cloud is getting more and more important in every telco strategy. It all depends on at what point of time they want to move the workload. But I personally see and observe that, okay, every telco will evolve or move towards a cloud environment. It all depends on which hybrid cloud or a private cloud, but cloud has its own efficiencies, and we work closely with likes of technology leaders like Intel and make sure that whatever cloud strategy puts into place, we make it work actually in the ground and make all the operators network live up and running in different architecture scenarios. Yeah.
Thank you, Sandeep. Thank you, Srihari. So let's have a look at our last question that we're going to cover on today's panel before we take Q&A. And so we're going to look at end-to-end automation in the telco cloud. So around this, we want to look at how service providers are going to successfully achieve that full end-to-end automation. So how is it going to work across multiple vendors, multiple cloud infrastructures that we've previously spoken about? Perhaps you could both share some examples. And then finally, we're going to talk about what aspects we think system integrators can bring to this very, very complicated space. So over to Srihari first, just to comment on this area.
Hey, thanks, Ruth. And whenever we think of a complete end-to-end automation, it is not a single person's job. It involves total ecosystem, and we need to make sure that many pieces need to work together. And that's where operators are relying on to the system integrators to build these pre-validated solutions ahead of the time, so that these guys can pre-validate and one of the example is VNF benchmarking and CNF benchmarkings that happen much before. And that's where if you have these pre-validated workloads are available and already tried into the environment, it becomes easy for the telcos to adopt this multi-vendor and multi-site kind of end-to-end automation. And in many cases, right, telcos are expecting, they got used to the single vendor system. That's where they are looking for to come up, system integrators to come up to the level that they can support the overall end-to-end automation, so that they can pre-validate some of the solutions, so that it becomes easy for them to adopt these disaggregated telco system. That's where system integrators' role is really critical in this journey, because they had a lot of role to play in integrating the complex pieces from multiple vendors and pre-validating that and making it available for the telco consumption. That's where they can play really a big role, I feel. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I got stuck on mute there. Can we go over to Sandeep now for some of your thoughts on this area too?
Sure, Ruth. I think thanks, Srihari, for putting it together. If you look at from the automation perspective, there are different ways or different areas of automation in a network. And if you look at from the extreme start is like we need to have a automation on the cloud itself, on the underlying cloud that is going into the network. And that is the automation on the cloud itself has benefits in terms of where you want to put your compute, which type of use case are there. It's a vertical integration that we need to do across the workloads. This is one thing. Other thing is automation is in terms of sites or getting large number of changes done in the network or large number of sites configured in an automated way to achieve efficiencies in terms of the labor that it goes into it, the time that we spend into it. And the third pillar that I feel which is important predominantly, is using the DevOps principle of using CI/CD in place, and that is like continuous innovation that is required to be delivered with a faster time to market. And since it is a multiple vendor stack coming together, so there's importance of continuous testing as well. So having a framework of CI/CD and CT in place so that we have a fully tested, verified solution live in the network and making the best features available to the network operators and ultimately the best-in-class experience to the users, which will enable a faster revenue access to the operators as well. And the other aspect is of I would say, how you manage these networks. The management part of it. There are a lot many automations that can be enabled on the management side as well. And if you have enabled different automations at different layers, it it will give efficiencies individually, but if you combine it together as a whole, it will give a composite efficiencies. That efficiencies will be perceived as we progress in the network lifecycle. Few of the examples, like for example, we at Tech Mahindra have a framework which is like orchestration of different domains together, and it's netops.ai, and which actually helps in orchestrating different domains and gets a best experience and best time to market for the operators to deploy it. In terms of what aspects that SICAN brings, because we do in day in, day out, and different complexity that are perceived in the market, which was not there, to be honest. All these complexity is actually giving a benefit of achieving the innovation and the agility that we talk about. But we at we as an SI at Tech Mahindra, we can ensure that, okay, the different stacks that are coming in are well verified, putting the right stack in place, getting it pre-verified in a pre-staging hub or in a lab, depending on what type of, I would say, situation in place. And so the operators can deploy in the production network a very, very well verified, I would say, stack, which makes more sense for the networks. And at the same time, keeping on the different new aspects that are coming in the technology, and make sure that via CI/CD principles, everything is going in at the right time of the network with the right amount of tests done on it. So this as a whole will bring a lot of benefits. And we work very closely with the chipset and I would say leaders like Intel and other OEMs who actually bring in the products. So it's not only actually integrating the products together, at the same time getting a real-time feedback from the network as well, which all things needs, I would say, fine-tuning, or which things are working very great, and putting the best value for the ecosystem and for whole technology as a whole. So that's the value that SI brings in this complex environment.
Thank you, Sandeep. That was really interesting, especially all the background about CI/CD, which I think is quite fundamental in this space now, isn't it? So before we go to Q&A, we've got one last poll question that we'd kind of like to ask everybody after we've kind of covered this whole automation space and theme in today's webinar. So the question is, what is your organization's timeline for implementing automation within 5G? So the options are less than 12 months, 12 months to 24 months, over 24 months, or not sure, don't know. So we'll give everybody a few moments to vote on that question before we hand over to Srihari and Sandeep for some questions again. So just to repeat the question one more time. What is your organization's timeline for implementing automation within your 5G network? So let's go live to the results and see how they're forming. Fantastic. So I'm going to hand to you first, Sandeep, with if I've got you on the camera first of all, and maybe you could comment on what you think about these timelines and whether they are kind of earlier than you expected or about the right kind of time frame. Be interested in your thoughts.
Thanks, Ruth. I think these results are quite encouraging, and I believe these results resonate with the market sentiments as well, depending on the maturity that networks have today. So depending on the network maturity level as well, few have a priority to have it earlier, within 12 months, few have a plan, and of next 2 years, or maybe few have a plan for after 2 years. But it's good to see that everyone is thinking of having a plan. Most of the people are thinking of having a plan of automation in place. This automation will bring a lot of, I would say, good traction in the market in terms of the efficiencies that it can bring in. So these results are quite encouraging. Yeah, over to Srihari.
Yeah, I completely agree, Sandeep. And actually, definitely, almost all the telcos are thinking about the automation today. And most of the telcos are getting ready towards making their telco networks as much automatable as possible. obviously with the help of the ecosystem as much as possible. And these results are quite encouraging, as Sandeep said, and because the telcos are thinking in the right direction to implement the automation to generate the network which they can innovate very quickly.
Fantastic.
Thanks,
Well,
Ruth.
thank you both for your comments on that one. So we've now got to the point in the call where we'd welcome questions from the audience. If you have a question, please submit it in the Q&A box. And we've got a number of questions here. So we'll start asking the questions and try and do as many as we can within the time. And then if we run out of time and it's appropriate, we can try and follow up with you afterwards. So if you have a question, please add that into the Q&A box now. So just looking at the questions that we've got in that have just arrived, I wonder if I can come to Sandeep first. So we have a question about the ORAN life cycle. So the question is, what are the areas of automation in the ORAN life cycle that are really critical in this area?
Great question, to be honest. Thanks for putting this question up. I think in terms of RAN lifecycle automation, I think be it day 0, day 1, or day 2, all steps are critical to automate in terms of ORAN or maybe in any virtualized workload that we are running in. And another critical area of, I would say, automation within ORAN lifecycle is the CI/CD pipeline that we talked about. So all the DevOps principles that are there, we can leverage on those DevOps principles. We can deploy new releases in terms of software releases, new features, software patches, which was not, I would say, so easy in the legacy way of deploying networks. Another important thing that is there that we all should we would say cheerful about is that ORAN comes as a cloud native as a fundamental building block or fundamental philosophy of deploying or I would say developing the workloads. So all the aspects of cloud native functionality in terms of microservices, pods, and everything, which gives a lot of flexibility to automate many things. And importantly, beyond CI/CD, the continuous testing also an important thing that needs to be automated. So maybe thousands or millions of test cases could be automated in a real-time world and could run many test cases simultaneously on the different workloads. So right from having a pre-staging hub where we do many test cases from the CT perspective, having a CI/CD pipeline to have all the features tested, integrated, and validated in a real-time world, and having the automation done from all the stages perspective, right from day 0, all makes a lot of important aspects of ORAN automation across the life cycle.
Thank you, Sandeep.
Yeah.
Srihari, do you want to add anything to that answer at all?
Oh, it covered very well. Sandeep covered it very well, Ruth. Yeah, perfect.
Okay, thank you. So the next question that we've got in, excuse me a minute, is around what do we think the roadmap to upgrade networks from LTE to 5G is going to be? So I guess they're asking this in terms of how do we see that moving, to the cloud, but also in towards automation. I think earlier we spoke of brownfield and greenfield, so maybe you could comment on that.
So I think if I take up the question, so moving from LTE to 5G, predominantly it's a shift in terms of the bands that we handle from the RAN perspective and the benefits of all the network slicing that we can achieve in 5G and having it on a virtualized architecture with a cloud running parallelly on it. And I think these all will bring a lot of differentiation or different benefits with 5G. So if anyone think of moving from 4G to 5G or LTE to NR, there are a lot many different aspects comes into picture. What expected of the network, and at the same time, which type of architecture? It's a disaggregated, virtualized architecture, or it's like a legacy way of deploying it. So different approaches can coexist, but certainly having a virtualized architecture with a cloud, telco cloud will give a lot many benefits. The things that we talked about today in this discussion will help operators in realizing the true benefit of the technology as a whole.
Yeah, completely agree, Sandeep, on that. And actually, if you have a already virtualized telco workload, let's take the example of RAN itself. One of the example is that L1 you can virtualize with FlexRAN, that is from the Intel side. This once you are able to virtualize your network, even in 4G, you can do some of the elements. It makes your job easy to migrate towards the 5G. When you are virtualized, you are utilizing your cards servers to run your workloads, and you are doing most of your workload execution into the software. And for you, the migration become easy to move towards the 5G. So virtualizing your telco workload as a first step, and that creates a path for you to easily move towards the 4G to 5G. That's what I feel. In case of brownfield deployments, yeah, definitely telcos need to take a step-by-step approach towards that. How to migrate towards the 5G SA mode kind of deployments.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you for that answer. So another interesting question that we've got in is about how automation can manage QoS for mission critical services, how we see that happening dynamically. I know I touched on it a little bit probably in my intro, but maybe both of you could comment about how you see that working in terms of automation. I don't know who would like to jump in.
I think
first
if I can take that up, I think mission critical puts a lot of requirements in terms of time criticality and different availability in terms of the network components. I think the automation, the important aspect of ORAN is the radio intelligent controller that comes in place, and we can run multiple R apps or X apps just to realize different functions that we expect the network to perform in. This achieving efficiencies out of the mission critical network. And another thing is the slicing as a inherently that is available in 5G. We just need to make those slices more tailor-made in terms of KPIs that are expected out of a mission critical network, and just makes use of it. Automation will come on top of it. But these two things from the ORAN perspective, the framework of RIC, and will achieve these things, and think slicing will help in realizing it in either way, whether you are virtualizing or not virtualizing the network.
Yeah, I just to add on that, your quality of service and network slicing will guarantee you to serve the mission critical applications, and automation will on top of it will help you to make your service available and make the critical actions as quickly as possible to make sure that service is without interrupts, the quality of service is met.
Brilliant. Thank you both for your answers on that. So we've probably got time for one more question. So the question is, where are we in the hype automation journey?
It is a long journey, Ruth. I think we are moving my view is that we are moving in the right direction, and there are many things to be done, and many more initiatives are needed from system integrators to really make total end-to-end automation is possible. Kind of initiatives like as I mentioned, right? VNF, CNS benchmarking, and making pre-validated solutions available to the telcos.
I think if I add 2 cents here, just to add what Srihari just mentioned, I think if you look at today's automation solutions are mostly fragmented, which is talks about isolated in different domains. Some are addressing the zero-touch provisioning from the cloud infrastructure perspective or the workloads, and some are addressing only the RAN optimization or zero-touch network operations in terms of how you manage the networks. But it's still it's a lot of work needs to be done to have an end-to-end zero-touch or maybe AI-driven network deployment, and how to optimize that in terms of operations and all. And there where we feel we as an SI can come in and stitch everything together, different domains together, and make it a one, I would say, automation platform or a framework that solve most of the problems in the network, rather looking at isolation in different domains. So that's my view around it.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. I actually think we've probably got time for one quick question if we have short answers from you both. So this one is around, is it possible to build a lab environment of ORAN using open source resources? I don't know if you've come around that, but maybe you could talk about some examples you've seen in the lab.
It all depends on, I think, if I understood correctly, like open source softwares, open source codes, and other stuff which are available in the industry. I think labs can be built on it, but you need to have a framework in terms of what to expect out of that lab, and to achieve different efficiencies, different type of flavor that needs to be built in lab, and that needs to be worked very closely with the OEMs and the operators in terms of expectation that can be met. Open source is something which is available, but it also needs in what flavor that we are using it in the lab.
Yeah, thank you. Srihari, do you want to quickly comment?
Yeah, thanks. And labs are really important to build the skill set needed into the market, and so that's where the open source plays a critical role, Ruth. I feel whatever the open source elements, able to bring it to the lab and able to build a environment where we can try the new things, labs are going to play a critical role. But as Sandeep mentioned, it need to be backed by the initiatives to build the robust automation. Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, so we're coming up towards the top of the hour, so just some concluding comments really about today's session, which I've myself has thoroughly enjoyed. So it's been really great to cover both ORAN and sort of telco cloud in sort of really deep detail. I think we've all concluded that from the sort of survey polls that we've had in this webinar, deployments of core networks are currently ahead in terms of virtualization and cloudification, but the automation is massively important, and that's across all domains. Some of the key points that we've called out as well, and Srihari and Sandeep have mentioned, is about ORAN and cloud both need to work towards openness. And also, I think a key takeaway is both around building and gaining more skills in this area to support and grow the whole ecosystem. I think also, you know, we've spoken a lot, and Sandeep as well has shared a lot of detail about CI CD pipelines and the real importance and efficiency. So this is like really great. And I see all this building together through the individual domains to hopefully link up to an overarching automation end goal. So I'd like to thank Tech Mahindra and Intel for sponsoring today's webinar. And I'd also like to thank you, Srihari. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thanks,
and also
Ruth.
Sandeep.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks
for
everyone.
being such great guests. Thanks for sharing your experience and opinions on today's panel and making it a really rich discussion. So for Light Reading, I'm Ruth Brown. Goodbye and see you all soon.
Thanks, Ruth. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Ruth. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.